state. He described the colors of the people, the customs of the people. And he was such a good reporter, when the Africans told him something he didn't believe, he said so.
Is it fair to call them invaders then? It seems like they were nonviolent.
No, this was Greek curiosity that would be the preface to the invaders later on. Now, my point that I'm getting to is that the information that Herodotus brought back to Greece whetted the curiosity of other Greeks, and Alexander's teacher, Aristotle, introduced him to the works of Herodotus. And Alexander, when he invaded Africa 332 BC, had a kind of respect for Africa that no invader has had before or since.
You mean Aristotle's writings and thoughts were based on an African root?
Yes, and a lot of his so-called philosophy, which was more African, but we won't get into Aristotle as probably the world's first pleasurer, of almost mass pleasurer. Now, Alexander came into Africa with great respect. He wrote his mother, and he said that he had come to literally the home of Greek culture, especially our Greek religion. He tried to effect a wedding between young Greece and old Africa in decline. Now, Africans were seeing Europeans as invaders for the first time. This is 332 BC. And seeing them physically for the first time. There is nothing that happened in Africa before that the European had anything to do with at all. And remember, when they came for the first time, they came as invaders. And except for the Alexandrian period that is marginally positive, all relationships between Africans and Europeans from that day to this day has been negative.
All right, let's talk about that second intrusion or invasion.
Now, the intrusion that would be aggressive would be the Punic Wars. Hannibal's father warned him of those people across that water and told him in essence, you got to take the battle to them before they bring it to you. Now, Hannibal was cautiously trying to guard that front door of Africa from arising a hungry Roman people. Now, the Carthaginians had good relationship with the people of Sicily. And the people of Sicily did not want to join the other Romans in a fight against Carthage. But Rome wanted the trade in the Mediterranean. They didn't want to share it. They wanted all of it. And a jealousy grew among them about the city of Carthage to the point that they greeted each other in the morning and added, Carthage must be destroyed. They opened the Senate and added, Carthage must be destroyed. They said good night to each other. They said, Carthage must be destroyed. Yes, Roman citizen, Carthage must be destroyed.
And so when Hannibal got a wind of that kind of a thought process,
he took the battle to them before they could bring it to him. And for a generation, that old lion held Europe at bay and saved Africa from European aggression. Finally, betrayed by two Africans, Scipio Africanus and Maecenacius, he knew that they had not protected his right flank or his left flank, and that Roman army was coming down on him. Then he told his steward, send me the wine. And he took some dependable African poison. But there's much more to this life than that. This was probably the finest physical soldier the world has yet to know. He never asked his men to do anything that he wouldn't do.
With the demise of Hannibal, what happened? That's when
With the demise of Hannibal, the Romans came aggressively, destroyed the city of Carthage brick by brick, and this was the beginning of European aggression in Africa and European aggression in the rest of the world. And I maintain that the total relationship of Europe to non-European people from that day to the present day has been negative, and that they have done the world through their invasions more harm than good.
Give me a date when that onslaught began.
The onslaught began with the defeat of Hannibal.
And what
We're
year?
dealing around 200 BC or thereabout. All right. Now, and with the defeat of Hannibal and the establishment of the Romans in North Africa, Rome now had a breadbasket for its future empire. If it wasn't for the agriculture of North Africa, there would have been no Roman Empire, because they would have had no means of feeding that vast army and their own population.
Let's talk about the rationale, the mental process that went into the whole rationale for enslaving a people. Where did the Europeans come up with that concept? Or was that an original idea?
No, it wasn't an original idea, but the Europeans introduced a kind of slavery that had never existed in the world before.
Including the Arabs?
Yeah, well, the Arabs, that's a later day introduction of slavery, and they're not to be gotten off of the hook, but it has no direct relationship to the period that we're dealing with right now.
All right. Where did that rationale come from?
It came from the mind of the European. And if you read some of the early writings of Aristotle, Aristotle was really the first person to do a philosophical essay on race and a kind of a justification for the aggression of Europe still to come. To say that there are certain people endowed by certain traits, you know, to rule over other people. Most of the so-called Greek philosophers believed in slavery and had slaves. But when they came under the influence of the teachings in Africa, they were in serious trouble. This is why Socrates had to be put to death, and why he wouldn't even he wouldn't recant. Now, what we have to hurry and do is to establish the fact that this first European aggression, and mind you, I'm letting Alexander off the hook for my own reasons,